apparently something with Jupiter and Rahu, and I don't know. I don't know if the cord cutting's really working, because I went and I called them back. Oh my god, nothing is happening yet. This is actually a companion video. Chris and I have decided to do a couple videos in tandem, and this one is going to be a discussion about discipline, commitment, and conscious behavior. A little portrayal in the beginning, yeah, was humorous, but it's also very serious. We need to talk a little bit about betterment and, whether it's elevation of consciousness, spiritual empowerment, and personal development, where it works, and what doesn't work. And let's just say so much of the time, I do encounter a lot of, that. We actually have a big problem, I think, in our community where there's always this sort of fix, this quick fix that we're looking for, something to kind of come from the external to alter or change our behavior for us. Because of that, there are a lot of problems in the spiritual community as far as not only getting the credibility it deserves, but earning the credibility it deserves. A lot of things, a lot of sacred and very well thought out practices have become homogenized, watered down. With that also comes a big need for us to start taking personal responsibility for what we do with those things. I've been online for 6 years, and I've been Scarlet Moon for 4 of those years. And those of you who've been watching me for quite an extended period know exactly how I feel about what we just saw. We need to understand that things don't just happen because we go through the right steps, or we studied the right practice, or we went through the right motions. Okay? Because that is not conscious behavior. That is empty ritual. Everything that we do must be done with intent and intensity. I want to impress upon everybody the need to understand, if we are not mentally and emotionally available to commit to our own practice, whether it be spiritual, whether it be actually developmental. Maybe we're not working on a spiritual path. Maybe we're not trying to become, more spiritually practiced magically or psychically or intuitively, but we are working through perhaps a behavioral pattern or a piece of emotional or psychological conditioning. We still have to take responsibility for being committed to that. What can happen with the empty ritual, or again, the misuse or misappropriation of these practices to be used as maintenance or supplements, is that they do not actually do a thing. And sometimes they can actually serve to retard, in the literal sense of the word, progress. I feel as though there is a great deal of processing going on, especially of late, the last few months. And the processing is important, but I believe that we're using the wrong tools sometimes to actually get through it. Take, for example, the portrayal of somebody who thought that astrology was going to somehow time his emotional release from his baggage. Astrology is not to be used that way. Astrology can't be used that way. That is the portrayal of somebody who is not taking responsibility for their own free will. It's outside of me. It's therefore separate from me. I have no control. And we give up a lot of control, a lot of self-control, when we think about it that way. It's very important to understand that these are not meant to be things that just go through the motions, whether it's astrology, meditation, whether it's working on our physical health. We do have to actually up the ante every once in a while and make time for it. So many times we're looking for instant gratification and instant relief. And typically, when we do have an experience, whether it be a spiritual experience or an internal experience, the first time it does feel like instant gratification or relief. But it doesn't last, does it? Usually that buzz or that epiphany, carries us through, for a little while, maybe a month, maybe 6 months. But then if we're not actually keeping up that practice, if we're not keeping up that good feeling, we can again slip back into our old ingrained patterns. And they may, if they are demotivated, just give up altogether, and all of a sudden, all that hard work is all for naught. When we talk about being conscious, we need to also understand that everything has to be a choice. We don't just do things automatically. So many people in the world don't understand what they're doing. And when I mean they don't understand what they're doing, they don't even know how to actually convey or articulate the problem they're trying to solve, the issues they're going through, or the reasoning behind the decisions that they make. It's always, I don't know, I just did it. I don't know, I was upset. I don't know, I don't know. In the case of sitting down and doing the work with somebody, sometimes what can happen is that they've gone so long without actually taking up the cup of doing their own internal processing, they actually spend more energy during the therapeutic process towards the reparation, towards the exercise process, processing. And so if a person were to go for a healing or for a reading or a consultation or a coaching, and say they had an hour to actually get some work done, they went so long without consciously looking into themselves, preparing themselves to get to work, that they spend 75% of that time actually processing through that as opposed to working through that. We really do need to actually take it upon ourselves to, again, become much more mindful in what we're doing. Even if we can't necessarily find all the big pretty words or the difficult small words, we can at least understand the process behind what we're actually doing so that we're not on autopilot, because none of this, will work on autopilot. If it does work on autopilot, it will not work for a very long time. And then it's only a matter of time before we've undone the process. We have to ask ourselves every once in a while, how committed are we to our own wellness or to our own spiritual or personal advancement? If we're constantly looking for the next quick fix, we're looking for something easy, we are keeping ourselves willfully ignorant of the true process of how this works. It's all about mental and emotional availability. Sometimes we get so caught up in where we've been, almost living in our journals, whether it's our mental journals or a literal journal. We get so wrapped up in our journey about where we've been, we're not mentally and emotionally available to actually take on a commitment. And so we think about externalizing again. It's not my fault, Saturn retrograded back into Scorpio. God, shit. That's just the weather. Astrology is just the weather, and the theme will change. If it's hot outside and we're in the middle of a drought, consciously choose to water your garden. If it's raining outside, consciously choose to dress appropriately. Drive more carefully. Discipline comes into this, where we have to also pay attention to where, if we start to see results, we don't want to backpedal. So many people, as soon as they get the relief, they go back to behaving unconsciously. They go back to those choices. All of a sudden, I'm more confident about going back and repeating, And it's not about maintenance, And that's one of the things that I wish I could change about the perception of the spiritual path. That this isn't about making sure we get a moment, an hour, a day, or a week of relief before we go back to our lives. These things need to be integrated. Going through the motions and using this like some kind of, maintenance therapy is kind of like saying, well, I wanted to clean the house, but really all I did was take all the dirt and the cat hair and paint it into the floor and the wall. I'll see you in a month when I have to do it again. And I think that the reasoning behind all this has to do with how we're programmed to think. We're too operative in what I've been terming salvation consciousness. Something's going to come along and make this better. Salvation consciousness is what causes people to spend all their spiritual time thinking about twin flames and lottery tickets. Salvation consciousness, really makes us think more about inevitability than strategy. And not everything is inevitable. Yes, let's do a tarot reading, let's do an astrology reading, let's be exacting, and let's strategize. Let's make some constructive work out of this. Yeah, we'll time this. What's the most optimal time for this? What's the most likely response I'm going to get from making this action? When, how, what's the best? That's cool, but someone's got to go and exact that. Don't mortgage your free will away. That's not discipline, that's not committed. Be careful of salvation consciousness in other ways. Living in fear, but yet at the same time hoping something comes along to end or fix it all. Are the aliens going to come blow us up this week? No, actually they're going to come and save us this week. Maybe. If something doesn't work, is it because we haven't been doing it for very long? Is it because we aren't actually doing this with intensity? Are we just going through the motions? If all answers to those things are no, then by all means pick up another practice. But be sure and consciously sure, 100% sure, that is the situation at hand. Don't let yourself get taken for a ride by people who are counting on you not to be conscious. Don't let yourself be sold on the idea that this crystal somehow can override your relevance as a spiritual being responsible for your own reality. This is an asset. It is a tool. It is no more responsible for your energy healing than the fork is responsible for getting the food in your mouth. It can help, and it can help a lot. But if we don't know how to use it, it's not doing us any good. If we're using the fork backwards, if we're using the fork to dig up, to dig outside in the garden, make sure that we're actually using our tools correctly if we choose to use tools. If we allow ourselves to get stuck in a mindset that will never get better, start there. Examine why you feel that way. If you find yourself listening to a message like this and feeling more demotivated, or feeling angry, or feeling like, well, then what's the point of all this stuff? Start there. What's the point of all this stuff? These are all enhancers. These are all enhancers. These are all ways to get certain advantages while we work through our path. Whether it's astrology, tarot cards, spells, mantras, can serve to actually maintain, but again, only with discipline, and we have to keep that up. That's why it's important to also understand where to become conscious on the internal. Find out where the blocks are. The autopilot. When do I go on autopilot? What programming, what neural pathway says go on autopilot in my mind? What changes my mental chemistry? Is there some kind of piece of programming in there that makes me always behave a certain way when I get a new job? Is there a certain piece of mental machinery in there that always makes me behave a certain way when I get into a relationship? That's also a great place to start. But these tools are going to do you no good unless you start working on that on the inside as well and taking responsibility. We can't treat spirituality the way some people treat diet pills. We all know diet pills don't really work. We can't be willfully ignorant of that truth. And once we accept that truth, we can't defy it either. You need to reach into yourself and find a power that you have. Okay? All magic and all energy comes from emotional availability. How much energy can you put out? How much can you actually put out into the world? One of the toughest things I had to ever go through in my life was understanding that where I grew up, what I came from, was not the way the world was everywhere. But I made damn sure that I recognized that. I grew up in a place where there was a lot of defeatism. There's a lot of emotional instability, a lot of abuse, poverty. I grew up in a place that was not exactly the place that would cultivate a lot of motivation. And a lot of people can stay in that area. The first thing I had to do was reject that reality. And I did, at a very young age. It was 8, 9. I just rejected it. I stopped trying to redeem and reform and fix it. I stopped trying to turn something toxic into something healthy. That meant rejecting a lot. Rejecting my roots, rejecting family politics, rejecting the social culture of the neighborhood and the town I grew up in. And I don't regret it. And the way I found that was that I decided to turn my energy inwards. I wasn't trying to look out and get something from places that weren't there. I wasn't trying to pull books off empty bookshelves. I turned my attention inward. I cultivated the reality and the experience that I wanted to have in myself. And I empowered that dream, and I basically, as I grew older, even before adulthood, I just exuded that. And anything that was ineligible, anything that was vibrationally ineligible or incompatible, scattered and flew before me. And I'm not special. Everyone can do that. And I'm not saying that like some motivational speaker, y'all know how I feel about that, the motivational speaking, inspirational speaking, you know how I feel about that. If you can find and make the time to really sit down with yourself, and if not sit down with yourself, yes, go get yourself resources to expand your awareness. You know, Chris has got his mindful awareness coaching, which is basically all about kind of getting rid of mental clutter. And that is going to be so much better for you. Things like that, whether you do it with him, or you do it on your own, or you do it with a group, that is going to be so much better for you to really organize that. The inner work, before we try and change the external. Because we don't want to change the external according to the impulses of an autopilot or unconscious mind. We want to change the external according to what we know we really actually desire to experience, not what we think we want to experience. We want to be aware, we want to be deliberate, we want to be disciplined. Choose that. You know, choose to be 100% certain. Even if you lack certainty in what is, you know, in the great mystery of the universe. Choose to be certain when you go and make your reality. Because we're always manifesting. We're just trying to get our manifestations under control. And to do that, we need to be conscious, disciplined, and committed.